I got sent a screener for a very indie film that I really want to talk about today. It is called Control. So let's get into it. So Control is almost a solo performance movie starring Lauren Metcalf as this lead role. She's playing the British secretary to the British Prime Minister, and she is taking his daughter back home in a Tesla, which then gets hacked and remote controlled by a very mysterious figure played by very controversial actor Kevin Spacey. And he is forcing her to do certain things to repent for some of the actions that we learn throughout the course of the film. Starting positively, I can see a really good movie in here. I think it does have an interesting enough concept that if it was directed really well and featured a really electric lead performance, you could make something out of this. There are plenty of movies that are based around this premise that really work. I particularly liked The Guilty that came out a few years ago, the remake of that Denmark film starring Jake Gyllenhaal. And while that didn't work for some others, that really worked for me. But you really need a committed performance to take you through that movie, to make you really enjoy it, because those movies can get really flat, and it takes a lot to make them work and keep them compelling throughout the runtime, because we're not getting exposed to a whole lot in terms of visual storytelling. We're relying solely on a performance, really crafty direction, and an electric screenplay to try and get us through those types of movies. Unfortunately, this movie is devoid of practically all of that. This is a real amateur production. It looks amateur, it feels amateur. The writing feels like a first kind of screenplay. The performance, while I can see the effort, it's just not there. It's not good enough to really carry you through this 80-minute runtime. That's a short runtime for a film, and it should be shorter because there's just not enough there. There's not enough depth in this screenplay. There's not enough depth in these performances to really carry you through this movie, to make you ask questions and be intrigued about what it has to offer. It has the really amateur tendency to over-explain every single thing to the audience. And after a while, it just becomes really dull and you just lose any interest you might have had in this film. The line delivery is also really awkward at points. It just doesn't work. And I kind of blame the screenplay on that because, I don't like Kevin Spacey as much as the next guy. But separating art from the artist, he's a 2-time Academy Award winner. He is a good actor. And you couldn't distinguish the fact that this is a former 2-time Academy Award winner in this role. You kind of feel like he's just any other person that they've just pulled in from the street, apart from the voice that is recognizable. I didn't like the voice performance, and I didn't really enjoy any of the performances that came along with this movie. It all just felt amateur hour. I am by no means a filmmaker, but I try and educate myself as much as I can about the whole process of making films so I can give you a better review. And I definitely looked a lot into screenwriting, and I mean, it's pretty obvious, but the first thing that a lot of these courses teach you is to write within your means. If you have a really limited budget, you need to write for that budget. Yes, you can be ambitious and creative with certain visual effects and things of that nature if you're a really talented and crafty director and you've got a great team behind you. But if you don't have that, you really need to stick within your means, and this just doesn't do that. And because of it, some sequences look absolutely ridiculous. For example, most of this film, the car is a Tesla, and you see the interior of this car throughout the entire film. And there's a shot at the end, which I won't spoil, but it would have been an expensive shot. It was definitely the most expensive shot in the movie, and you can tell that because the Tesla's just not in this scene anymore. It's been replaced by a completely different car that looks 30 years older. There's this big screen that our lead actress uses throughout this movie. It's a big part. It's a key moment in this film where she's trying to take control of the car and nothing's happening. They point that out. And then you see her coming out of the car during this sequence and the screen's not there. It's just all these weird inconsistencies, and really just shows you how much of an amateur production it is when flaws like that just stick out so badly. Like, they didn't even try to make the car look similar to the one that we've seen throughout the entire film. There's also certain sequences that definitely required a stunt double, but they clearly didn't have the budget for that. So there's just these weird cutaways. It all just looks really awkward. And once again, it's because the screenplay is not written within its means. It's not formed for the budget that it has. It really needed a bigger budget to really execute its vision. And without that, it just looks janky and awkward and takes you right out of the movie. Also, people in this movie don't react to things the way that normal people would. There's a scene where the lead character is highly distressed and is mentioning these insane circumstances that are really threatening, obviously threatening. She's telling this to a complete stranger. And the stranger's just stone-faced. He's not reacting at all. It's like, is this guy a sociopath? Like, any regular person that would have heard what she is saying would at least be concerned or distressed, would instantly call the police. And he just doesn't. It looks like he's bored reacting to what she's saying. I just can't believe some of these scenes. It's completely shocking at how these moments made it past the editing room and were put in the final cut of the movie. This thing can unravel really fast too. There's just certain moments in here that could have been explained away so quickly. I think the issue that our character is dealing with could have been solved really quickly in the movie. And it just doesn't. It just feels like you have to suspend all disbelief for the premise of this movie to even work. It's asking for too much, I'm afraid, because it just comes across silly that these moments couldn't have been rectified like that, especially with the people that are affected in this story. I really wish I could show some praise towards an indie film like this that tries to go for something interesting, that has some kind of interesting concept, but I have to call it like I see it. This is just not a good movie. It feels like a direct to video kind of movie that would be an instant 7-day release at Video Easy. It just has that written all over it. And whether you like that kind of schlocky kind of film, that's up for you to decide. But I just kind of want a little bit more out of my movies to have a really good time with it. This just didn't give me that. The best I can say is that it could be a good movie to get a couple of buddies with and have a laugh at, just because it can be so silly at times. But that's really it. If you're looking for just such an excellent powerhouse film with powerhouse performances and this interesting concept all combining into just a really neat little film, it just doesn't give you that. And it's kind of crazy. They tried to submit this at the Cannes Film Festival, and if you've seen this movie, you know that it just didn't have what it takes to be accepted at a festival of that nature. It's insane to me. As a score, unfortunately, I'm going to give Control a 1 out of 5. There's just no real redeeming qualities here. There's ineptitude written all over this film. I just really wanted a lot more from it, and I just don't think it's a good movie at all. There's barely anything that rears its head to make you believe that this is a quality release. From the minute this thing starts, you can see just how janky this film is. And those are my thoughts towards Control. If you've seen the film, let me know what you think about it in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.